Good morning and welcome to today's Smart Business Strategies podcast. I am Anna Wiles, the franchise economist. I am delighted to have you join us today. Please join me in welcoming our very special guest, Jason Olson, the founder and CEO of Image Studios. Jason, thank
Hi,
you for
Anna.
being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
I am very excited to have you here. I mean, super excited. I bet this will be the most watched podcast or rewatch podcast I've ever done, and I've been doing this for years now. Okay, this is that exciting of an opportunity, and I can't wait for the audience to hear about it. So, start us off and tell us a little bit about you, Jason, and how Image Studios came to be.
Yeah, so Image Studios started, the idea came in 2009 during the recession. Prior to Image, I had started a car dealership here in Salt Lake City. Had been doing that for about 15 years, grew that into a large dealership, but that recession, when that hit, was just devastating.
It
And
was.
I had 100 employees. I was working, 50, 60 hours a week. And if that business got any bigger or we decided to scale, I would just have to give more of my life away. And, a big core value of mine is freedom. And I don't know if any of your listeners or audience has ever felt this way, but I drove to work one day and I looked at the mirror and I just thought, I don't know if I love what I do. And that's kind of a scary thought to have because you've been doing something for so long and the thought of change can be scary, but I really did not feel like I found my calling. And I stumbled on the salon suite model. One of my best friends is a hairstylist, and she had moved into one of the first ones that opened up in Utah back in 2009. And I went down to visit her one day and saw the space and just thought, this is such a great idea, but the execution was so bad. The spaces were tiny. There was no windows. It did not feel like you were in a place for beauty. I spent all day there talking to everyone that was working there, and they all loved the concept, loved the freedom. The beauty professionals that were there had been working in the industry for 5 or 10 years. They were ready to go out on their own. But it's expensive to build a salon. It's expensive to build a spa. And then you got to hire all these employees. And beauty professionals are creatives, they're artists, and they really love being in the craft. And so people said they loved being their own boss and being, in a studio, but they didn't love how small these studios were. They didn't love that they weren't built for their use. That was kind of an afterthought. They were just tiny boxes. And I thought, wow, this is such a great opportunity to provide space for beauty professionals that want to start a business, a co-working space for beauty. But what if we did it the right way, which is to make it feel like a place for beauty, make it a creative space, make it feel inspiring when you walk in for a creative and an artist to get really excited about taking their career to the next level. And then the other thing people mentioned was they just felt really inexperienced and lacked knowledge on how to run a business. They went to beauty school. They didn't go to business school. So here they are running their own business now, but they've never been taught the fundamentals. And so the thesis for Image was to build beautiful spaces for creatives that function for their use. So they're designed the right way so that they can use it to the best of their abilities and maximize that space. But then also to pair that with our Image Pro education program, which is an entrepreneurship, basically university that they get access to free of charge when they join our brand. And it teaches them all the fundamentals of running their small business out of a studio. And so I looked at the pain points and the opportunities and felt like we could fill a really big gap that was not being met and still not being met to this day, other than with our brand in the industry. But it's been a really fun ride. I opened up the first Image Studios in 2010. I ended up opening 5 more in 5 years here in the Salt Lake Valley. And then in 2016, I started franchising. And so went down that road. It's been a ton of fun in the franchise world. We just opened our 115th store. I was just at that on Sunday in Temecula, California. And we've got another 35 locations under construction this year and about 42 that will go into construction next year. So we're off to some really great growth. Very exciting to be in this industry where there's just tons of opportunity and a ton of beauty professionals in the United States who want to go out and do their own thing, but they need a platform to do that.
Right, absolutely. This is a fascinating story. So from car dealerships to salon suites, what a story. And you've just touched on a bunch of points that will answer this question, but go ahead and tell us, what do you think really makes Image Studios unique and different from other salon suite concepts and other salon suite franchises, Jason?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say when you look at our differentiation is our design. And so as you can see here, I'll show you something. When you look at our spaces, they're built again specifically for beauty professionals and spa professionals who are looking to open up their own business. So our spaces really have this wow factor. There's lots of glass, lots of windows, lots of natural light. Rather than when you look at other spaces in this industry, they're tiny boxes and very kind of
dark.
Exactly. Yeah. So we do a really good job. I've always felt that the physical space that people occupy should inspire the work that they do. And so when we look at building space for creatives, the whole idea was to really make it something where these beauty professionals get excited about. The other thing that's a big differentiator for us is when I started getting into the industry and looking at the research, the really interesting thing was the beauty industry is made up of a lot of different professionals. And so you have your hairstylists, hairdressers, and barbers that make up, there's around 869,000 of them. But then you have estheticians, lash artists, massage therapists, makeup artists, nail artists. You have med spa professionals that fall under other, tattoo artists. So I looked at this total TAM, the total addressable market, and hairstylists account for less than half of the industry. And when we look at our competitors that are in the salon suite industry, they're focused solely on hairstylists. So they're building space for hair, but they're only going after that top cohort of the total addressable market. And when I looked at that, I thought, gosh, there's almost 2 million beauty professionals in the US, but less than half of those are what everyone is trying to build space for. Why don't we build space that accommodates all the beauty professionals? And so when we look at Image Studios tenant diversity, we are very much more diverse on the professional base. So when we look at our competitors, and here in the gray, 86% of their spaces are hairstylists and barbers, and then 12.5% are the spa professionals. Whereas at Image, we're about 66% hairstylists and barbers, and then 30% estheticians and spa professionals, and then 4% of like med spa professionals, tattoo artists. So our big differentiation is that our tenant base is much more spread out amongst the whole industry, which allows us to be capturing and doing business with people that other brands are not. And so the big benefit to that is when you have a space that is not just all hairstylists, they're not all competitors. And so then when you have a space like ours where, 66% are hair and then the other 34% are spa and other, they end up networking a lot more because they're sharing clients back and forth. Because when a client walks in and they go, wait, I can get my lashes done, my Botox, my eyebrows threaded, I can get permanent makeup, I can get a massage, I can get my nails done. Like pretty much everything under one roof is there at every Image Studios. Then the client says, hey, would you introduce me? And so when people start introducing clients back and forth, they start creating these networks, they start building a community, they start becoming friends. But the most important part of that is then you start to establish culture. And culture at a co-working space is really hard to create because they're not employees, they're just renting space. But we are able to create a really strong culture within our brand at each location because of this network effect that we are able to create. The reason why we attract so many other professionals besides hair is because of how we build our spaces. They're meant to be modular and move around so people can reconfigure where the millwork is, where the sink is very easily, whereas you can't do that in other salon suites. And so we just have a much more diverse tenant base, which creates that community and culture, which when people have this sense of belonging, they stay longer with a brand because there's an emotional connection. And
Right.
so a lot of loyalty, we see longer time on site with our brand. And so it creates less turnover over time, more stability, and more consistency in cash flows for our owners. And so a big differentiator there that I think is one of the biggest things. And it also means we're attracting and doing business with professionals that we're not really competing with a lot of other brands for.
Hmm.
Everyone else is competing just for those hairstylists, whereas we're going after the whole beauty TAM, which is, I think, a big differentiator and is really how we stand out.
That is amazing, and it is how you stand out for sure. Now, speaking of owners, what is the role of the owner? How is he or she spending their time?
So the first year, which is, site selection and build out, they're getting, we have a lot of assistance in that whole process because most of our franchisees have never been through a commercial build out or,
Mhm.
signed a lease on a commercial space. So we're very hands-on, helping walk them through every step of the way in that process. Once that store starts construction, then is when recruiting starts. And so that's the big role of our owners, which is they're filling up these spaces. So they're recruiting, they're having meetings with people on site, they're giving property tours, they're getting people excited about the model, helping educate them about the resources available to get, to understand how to start a salon suite as a hairstylist or a nail artist or a spa professional.
Mhm.
And so as the ultimate role of the franchisee is, you're essentially managing the property. And when that property fills up, it's very much, it becomes a much less time to operate than a typical retail business or beauty business because you're not there 9 to 5. You're showing up to give tours. You're showing up to check in with people.
Mhm.
Our owners, once a store reaches stabilization, which is 100% occupancy, people are there 2 or 3 times a week for a couple hours each, just checking in,
Mhm.
helping people if they're moving in. If someone's moving out, they're doing a move out inspection. But the role becomes very much we call it part-time active, right? Where it's the
Mhm.
first year and a half is very much full-time, but then
Mhm.
once the store stabilizes, it becomes a very, very great lifestyle business. And that's how I was able to open, basically 6 locations over 6 years.
Well, mhm.
Was it, once a store stabilized, I'd start my next one, and then once that one stabilized, I'd start another one. And when I had those 6 stores open, I had one W-2 employee working for me who did all of my leasing and accounting. And then I had a contract handyman and a contract janitorial crew, and that was my team to run 6 rooftops, which was kind of incredible.
I,
So it's a great business to scale. It's a stable business. The cash flows and revenues are very predictable because everyone's on a 12-month or 24-month lease agreement.
mhm.
You pretty much know what your revenue and expenses are going to be next month, the month after that, because how these contracts line up on the aging.
Mhm.
So it just gives a lot of predictability. And the thing I love about this business was coming from the car business, which is a very much every day is a new day. No matter how good you did the day before or the month before, it starts
Mhm.
fresh every day, and
Yeah.
you're back to zero. Got to work your way up. And forecasting in that business is really tricky because you just never know what you're actually going to sell. Now in this business, it was just the 180 degrees difference because I had absolute forecasting precision that was so nice to know. Like, gosh, I
Mhm.
can look at my next quarter and
Right.
forecast and pretty much come in within 5% of that, maybe even right on target, sometimes above target, because of that predictability and the stabilization of your customer base, which are under contracts for the lease agreements. So I love that aspect a ton, and it just allows, if people want to scale, it's a great business to scale because you can do it with minimal employees and not have a whole team of 20 people.
Or no employees.
Or no, most of our owners are owner operators, right? So they're the ones that are doing it. I always say every business runs best when the owner's involved.
That's true.
We have some owners that we want owners to be involved at least for the first year if they want to scale out and bring someone in,
Mhm.
but they need to be involved to really understand how the business operates before they hand that off.
Mhm.
It's a lot of fun. It's, you're working with other entrepreneurs. That's your customer base. They're all people who are starting a business, most for the first time. Entrepreneurs are a really fun personality type. They're thinking big, they're taking risks, they're not, they may be afraid, but they still take action.
Right.
Um, and to
Mhm.
be able to work with other entrepreneurs is just inspiring. And so I find it so much fun because I'm an entrepreneur. Our image owners are entrepreneurs. Our image professionals are entrepreneurs. And so to be able to have a community where everyone is an entrepreneur is just intoxicating. We just love it. It's tons of fun.
Well, you shared so much, Jason. A couple of things I want to underscore is consistent cash flow. And then the other thing is you've made it very clear, this is not hands off, especially the first year. But then once you get to 100% occupancy, I mean, I think we can use the P word, passive income. And
Yeah,
that,
it's, and really, I think what a lot of our franchisees have in common is almost all of them have either been real estate investors, they've had rental properties, or they have always wanted to get into real estate.
right.
This is a way to get into commercial real estate where you can generate large amounts of revenue, but you don't have to go buy a $5 or $10 million shopping center, which is a huge down payment. You can do this by leasing, leveraging landlords' tenant improvement allowance to help offset your build cost, and then get into the fundamentals of a real estate play, which is creating, residual consistent cash flows,
Mm-hmm.
property management. And so it's what I call asset light real estate, where you can get into
Right.
it without having to, put big, huge down payments down to go into a piece of property, but still have the benefits of real estate, which is cash flow. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely adore this concept. I really, really do. So share with the audience, Jason, who makes a good candidate for Image Studios?
we have people from all backgrounds. We've got doctors, we've got people who have been in sales, we've got people that have been in corporate America, we've got people who are contractors. There's pretty much any type of background works. I would say that the number one thing that we see, well, there's two things I see that are traits of our most successful franchisees. First one is that they want to follow a process, so they have that process discipline. So they're
Mm-hmm.
good at following a process. It's not complicated, but we want people to follow the process, and that always results in more success than those that do not.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would say the personality trait that also leads to success is just they have some soft skills, the good soft skills, right? So they're good connecting with people. They don't have to be someone who is always the life of the party. That's not necessarily the personality type. It's just someone who is good at connecting with people, who is good
Mm-hmm.
at listening, and helping people, find out which studio is going to be the best for them and helping them shepherd them along that process. And so they don't have to have a background in sales, but I think the biggest thing is they've got to have the ability to connect with people. And
Sure.
also just the idea of what I've described about the type of people you're working with, these other entrepreneurs, if that gets people excited, being able to work with other entrepreneurs, and essentially at the end of the day, our franchisees are seen as sort of mentors and guides by our beauty professionals. So they really look up to our owners, and they see them as kind of larger than life because they're the ones that started this business, and they're the ones that are going to be they'll be renting space from. And so if people enjoy working with others, helping inspire them, and this is a fun business because your customers, who are your beauty professionals, they're changing their life by moving into this opportunity. And that's really fun. It feels good to be in this business
Yeah.
because the people that you're doing business with are improving their lives. And it's nice to know that it's a business that does good for everyone involved. And so if that stuff gets people excited, I would say it's definitely something they should explore. and definitely reach out to you to learn more, because there's a lot of ways you can make money. There's a ton of different franchise opportunities out there, and it's all comes down to what's the right fit for them. But I think some of those things I've said resonate. It's something people should explore, because it definitely is a fun business. And a lot of our owners are husband and wife teams. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And what typically they'll do is one of the spouses will keep their job, keep their current income, and the other spouse will run image studios. And then the plan they typically have is to build and scale several image studios so that both can do this full time and get out of the rat race. So
absolutely, and replace their salaries, which is what so many people are looking to do. And then once they hit full occupancy, then they're doing it passively. So it's a great opportunity. And Jason, we are out of time. One thing before we go, just to underscore, this is a real estate play. This is not a beauty play, right? You're not buying a hair salon, renovating existing space, subleasing it in the B2B space. Other is commercial real estate, renting co-working spaces to beauty professionals. So very good.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic. Audience, this is Jason Olson, the founder and CEO of Image Studios. Thank you so much for being here, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Anna.
Absolutely. And audience, thank you for watching and listening. And be sure to come back next Wednesday at noon Eastern, where we're going to have someone in the booming health services industry. You're not going to want to miss it. Come back, set a timer. See you next Wednesday at noon. I'm Anna Wiles, the franchise economist, and be wildly wealthy in all areas of your life. Bye-bye.